Then Farley moves in with Scott. This chapter is called Nothing Will Change, and that's because everything changes.
Farley finally comes clean and is like, I think I'm going to move in. Dolly does not take it well. She's absolutely heartbroken. She feels cheated out of what she had imagined her 20s to be. She says the problem with it is that like you predict this future for both of you guys, and when the other person doesn't live up to your fantasies, you get mad, but you can't really do that. And she says this, which I found so honest, and it's interesting because I just had this conversation with somebody, and for the first time, I was on the other side of the conversation. I would like to pause the story a moment to talk about nothing will change. I've heard it said to me repeatedly by women I love during my 20s when they move in with boyfriends, get engaged, move abroad, get married, get pregnant. Nothing will change. It drives me bananas. Everything will change. Everything will change. The love we had for each other stays the same, but the format, the tone, the regularity, the intimacy of our friendship will change forever. I recently had a conversation about this where for the first time, I was the one being accused of changing. And something I felt bad about after the fact was that I was so adamantly like, no, nothing's different. Like, we haven't changed. Like, we haven't grown in different directions. Like, I was so desperate to be like, that's not true. Because I think in a romantic relationship, if you say to somebody, you feel like you're growing apart, or if you feel like you're going in different directions in your life, it means that you have to break up. And I think like I was so afraid of copping to it. But then I felt bad because later I was like, no, of course things have changed. Like I've moved, I've gotten married, and I'm not somebody that's a big deal, but I am like, there are a lot of people in my life. There's more people in my life this year than there were 4 or 5 years ago who I feel I like try to give a lot of my attention and care to. My career is so different. For the first time in my life, I'm traveling a lot for work. I just do have less free time than I used to. I have less of a synchronized schedule than I used to. Like things are different in my life, and it was really dishonest of me to pretend that they weren't. On both parties have to admit things are changing, but that doesn't mean the love has to change. And like to keep that going is so difficult. And that's the hard part of a friendship. And she says it in this book. She says, little did I know how much work it takes to sustain that kind of intimacy with a friend as you get older. And I am somebody who like obviously really wants to preserve my friendships, but I think the first step is admitting that life is changing and will continue to change. And there will never be a phase that will last decades because like priorities just do shift.
And I think that's the hardest part about maintaining friendships is acknowledging that things shift and change and then working to not combat it, but like grow with it.
Yes.
Because listen, you're going to have a baby someday.
Yeah.
Our relationship will change, but it doesn't have to be an ending or anything bad. I think everyone acts like when things change, then like that means they're over. Like you said, growing apart means breaking up. That's not true. You just have to adjust with the changes. Even you getting married and moving to a different part of town. Like,
it changed us, man. We still see each other a lot, but it is different when I can't just like walk over casually for coffee 3 different times a day.
Yeah.
And I think like the longer you're in a friendship, it feels like it should get easier, but it actually gets harder because of like what you take for granted. Mm-hmm. If you have had a best friend for 10 years, you're like, why would it get hard now? We've been in each other's lives so long. That must mean that like we're no longer friends. But actually, the longer you know each other, the more phases you have to learn to adapt to. You have to keep that muscle going. You can never rest on your laurels. But that's a choice you have to like choose to make and be honest about.
Yeah. And I think that that's one thing we see about when people talk about how hard it is to make friends in your 20s and 30s. It's similar to like how a lot of new things, new experiences are harder when you're older because you think the hard part of like having to adjust and discover something new is done. Like you're out of that period of your life and you're not. Like making new friends or maintaining friendships is hard and intentional work. And if you're not willing to do it, you can't have it.
I also think like I really relate to Dolly. I think the hardest thing about your 20s with friendships is when you go to school, you were all on the exact same path. And then your early 20s, you're all fresh out of it, but kind of lost together. And I think watching people find their way and finding out it's a different way than yours is so painful because you never knew it. I think like when you're 21 and the only difference is like majors, you're like, of course, we all have the same goals and we all have the same plans. And then like, it turns out you want different things and you're pursuing things at different paces and like life doles out different obstacles. And it is shocking and it can be so painful if left unattended or like unspoken.
Yeah, because you find out there is a certain period of time where everyone kind of has the same priorities, which is like graduating college, getting a job, getting settled in your adult life. And then you find out that people have different priorities, which for some people is starting a family, having a career. You find out everyone has a different order of what's important to them. And finding out that someone has maintaining friendships in last place is difficult.
Yes. And it can be really painful when you've like prioritized someone who hasn't prioritized you.
Mm-hmm. And again, she has this moment where she's like, I get that things were going to change, but I didn't think it would be when we were so young.
I was shocked. I mean, Farley is like 23. That to me is really young to move with your boyfriend. But again, I'm like a fucking city bred heathen.